Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alley Oop podcast show. I'm Andrew Gaze, and joining me, one of the all-time greats, a superstar, a legend. And if you want to know how good he is, all you have to do is ask him. I'm just talking about the legendary Lanard Copeland. Copes, the good folk at No Filter Media have decided that it'd be a nice little addition to the podcast world to have you and I put a little show together, and this is going to be a lot of fun.
And they are smart people, Joey, may I say. Joey, good to be here. I'm glad basketball is almost back on track. We're ready to talk basketball all around the world. Let's get started.
Well, it is. And I think we're just to give it an overview of what we want to do in this program is we wanted to have a look at all the basketball issues. And today we're going to have a focus on the NBA because that's on the eve of the season coming back after a fairly turbulent time with the whole COVID-19 situation. We're also going to take a look at Australian basketball, of course, the NBL, the Opals. They've been in the news lately. And later on in the program, we've got a good friend of ours, Jeff Van Groningen. He was the general manager of the Sydney Kings the last 3 years. He's now the general manager of the Adelaide 36ers. And with the NBL coming back online in December, they're hopeful to have fans coming back to the games in early December. They'll start the season. Just want to get him on to talk about the upcoming season and some of the new rules that are in place because it is going to be different than as it has been over the past couple of seasons. So it'd be good to get him on. So we better get all the talking out because we can talk, you and I, but Jeff, he can talk on the bottom of the ocean with a mouthful of marble. So we might just need to get all our words out before we get him on.
Now, Joey, you said that. How many teams have Jeff been general manager for? Is it Melbourne Tigers, Brisbane Bullets, Sydney Kings, Adelaide 36ers? Anybody else?
No, well, he started out, he was early on.
Geelong Supercats.
That's it, the Geelong Supercats. He was back in the day. It was a long, long time ago. So he's been around, well-travelled, had a lot of success, won a championship with the Brisbane Bullets and is very much a figure in NBL basketball. But, Coach, before we get stuck into the basketball stuff, I want to hit you up. The last couple of months, the whole Black Lives Matter movement has really taken hold. And the impact that what we saw over the United States and how it's affected the rest of the world has been really strong. And it has been here in Australia. We're going to talk about the Opals' response to the whole Black Lives Matter movement as well. But I thought, first off, how's it been for you over this period of time? And probably more importantly, getting your perspective on what it is to be a black man living in Australia.
Well, look, it was time, Joey. Black Lives Matter because they're in it to change the structure of what's going on in America, okay? Mm-hmm. Police brutality is terrible. And as you've seen with some of the cases lately, it's just bad, man. So I've spoken to Darryl McDonald and Dave Rucker and Ricky Grace and all the guys that have lived here in Australia. Mm-hmm. And look, Australia's a different place. There's racism everywhere in the world. We know that. But the racism in America is so much different than the racism here in Australia because in America, it's in your face. Mm-hmm. You know where to go and where not to go. All right? Mm-hmm. People on that side don't like your kind, then you stay away. Mm-hmm. Here in Australia, people are a little subtle about their racism. And again, I say racism is everywhere. I think the Aboriginals have taken it more than anyone here. Mm-hmm. But as a basketball player and a black basketball player, I've been sort of lucky not to see as much as perhaps the Aboriginals. Mm-hmm. And speaking to Darryl and speaking to Ricky, people know us as basketball players, not black basketball players. So we're really lucky. But again, I say the racism is terrible. I'm glad Black Lives Matter has come forth and put their foot down and said enough is enough.
And we don't want to bang on about this too much, but it's good to get your perspective on it. But back when you were playing, it was in an era throughout the 90s. It doesn't seem that long ago to us, but it is a long time ago. But just to get your thoughts in regards to on court, your competitors, your teammates, the fans, was racism noticeable for you back when you were playing?
There were a couple of incidents, where people use the racial slurs to try to throw you off your game. once in Wollongong, I think once in Brisbane. But me being from Atlanta, Georgia, down south, you sort of see that a lot. As you know, you visited Georgia, I think, and ran into some racism as well. But it's something that you call out. You got to know that's the wrong thing to do. I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to take that. And you sort of move on, And again, it's happened to me, but probably not as bad as it has in the States.
Well, there's no doubt here in Australia we've got some work to do when it comes to racism. It's not good enough, and as a nation we need to do a whole lot better. And it's been gut-wrenching for me over the past couple of weeks when you see prominent Australian figures, guys like you mentioned, Daryl, certainly Cal Bruton is one, Derek Rucker, guys that I grew up with great respect for, great admiration for, and to hear their feedback of some of the challenges that they had faced, I be honest and say, well, I wasn't aware that some of those challenges were there, and that's ignorance on my part, and it's a great learning that we go through in order to try and do better. So here's hoping that as a nation, through this movement, that we do make some inroads, and I think it's been a real line in the sand moment that happened in the United States. Sure, it had nothing to do with us, but it was as an example of some of the things that we do have to deal with here in Australia. And as you mentioned, certainly with the Aboriginal community, we have to do a whole lot better. But Copes, the good news is the NBA, it's back and up and about. It's not going to be.
Are we sure it's back, Julie? Because I'm hearing that perhaps those guys are a little bit skeptical about going back to the NBA because of the bubble.
Yes.
And
yes.
COVID-19. What's happening? You tell me what's going on.
Well, I've done as much research as I possibly can, and it's going to be an interesting situation. As most people will be aware, they've only got the 22 teams coming in to a so-called bubble. And there's been some sort of 80-page document that each and every one of these players have had to read and sign off on about behaviour. Yep. And before we get into the basketball side of things, just knowing when you've got these guys that are on exorbitant salaries, got this highly unusual environment where they've got to come in and be so disciplined.
Massive egos.
They've got to be, in this document, they've got to be 2 meters apart at all times when they're not playing. The only time they can be closer than 2 meters when they're playing. They've even gone into some of the recreational activity. They said you can play table tennis, but you can't play doubles table tennis. Such is the way in which they're going to put these provisions in place to give themselves the best chance. Now, apparently, they have got this number that if certain number of players get COVID-19, then they're going to shut it down. Now, we don't know. Adam Silver hasn't released the exact number, but it's going to be some very difficult circumstances. We've seen it at the AFL, and the AFL have already had some problems, perhaps not as strict as what their rules aren't as strict as what it seems to be going to be in the NBA. But knowing yourself and your experience, albeit a long time ago, what are the odds?
Listen to me. I'm going to say this now. As much as we love the game, as much as we want the game to come back, and hopefully it will, there is no chance in hell you're going to get that many players to sit around and not misbehave. Lots of money, nothing to do, big egos. There'll be somebody sneaks out. There'll be somebody trying to sneak a girl in. There'll be something going wrong. I'm just telling you what it is. It is what it is. Now, hopefully they put and again, they got security people watching the players and watching the interests. That happened here in Australia. So you telling me 22 teams of basketball players are going to be good? Not a chance in hell.
Should these players have to show up? Is it unreasonable for players to say, you know what, this is not for me? Do you think that they should have an obligation to, at the very least, show up and go through the process?
No, I don't. And I think me and you just differ on this argument.
Yes.
I think if you got a family, young kids, not knowing what's going to happen in that bubble, your family comes first. Now, speaking to you,
yes,
when we're out there playing golf, you tend to think the game owes you a lot more, and the guys should be obligated to show up. I don't, because again, most of these guys on guaranteed money. They have their money. They've done the right thing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to taking that COVID back to your family, your small kids, I say family comes first, Troy.
I don't think anyone disputes that, Coach. Absolutely.
Can you guarantee that no one will catch the virus in that bubble?
No, you can't. But what my argument has always been that in that bubble, you are in a far, far safer situation, unfortunately, I might add, than you are in the general population in the United States right now. Some of these cities, they are infested with COVID-19. I heard one state had over 4,000 positive tests in one day, Coach.
Guess what state it was? It was Florida. That's where the bubble is, Drew. That's why I say no way I'm not going to put myself in that predicament. No way.
Well, absolutely. And I think each case is different for each individual. But as a general overview of it all, I say that if you don't have any of those extenuating circumstances, safety should not be your concern in that bubble. Or it certainly should be less of a concern than what you are in the general population, because they are putting in such strict measures. You are getting tested, a ridiculous amounts of time. So you do have that element of a security about that. And I think when you think of these guys that are on tens of millions of dollars, and right now with the challenges that is facing the United States and people right throughout the world, here is an opportunity for them to go and help by entertaining, by allowing people to turn on the television and see them and get incredibly, still highly paid, rewarded for that. And I would like to feel that they would have a sense of obligation to it. Now, it's not always the case. And one of the with perhaps not the marquee players, but one of the little argy-bargy that was going on with Davis Bertans, who's is with Washington Wizards. He used to play with the Spurs. He came out and said, listen, I'm going to be a free agent. I don't think it's worth my while to come in here. I think I'm going to be damaging, and I'm paraphrasing here, damaging my what I could get paid in the future. Right. And he said, well, I'm going to sit this one out. And then Evan Fournier, the Frenchman, and he came out on Twitter and said, and we've got the tweets you can see them like that. And he came out and said, this is what's wrong with the NBA right now. Is it to say, well, he has a sense to say, we've got to at least show up. So I think that there's some sort of middle ground where, of course, if you've got health issues, absolutely you should not be going there. No. And if your kids have health issues and you're going to be coming, for sure. But if you are just in a healthy situation, that fear of going in there, I don't think should be there.
Are the NBA fining these guys or taking some of their money if they don't?
I don't believe they are. And I don't think that they should, because they're in a situation that this is uncharted waters. There are health issues, and certainly you look at the way in which Adam Silver has handled the relationship with the players, and they both seem, both parties, the league and the players. I don't know of too many leagues where they are so compatible and on the same page and helping each other out. They do a tremendous job with that. So I don't think that they get to those levels, but you certainly can understand why, if you are Adam Silver and saying, well, hang on, we need you all there. I guess the other issue, Copes, is it legit? Is there going to be an asterisk 100%. Next to this champion if they are able to get the season through?
100%. I think there's going to be an asterisk. But here's the question I got to ask you. Who do you think is going to win this thing? Aren't you a Laker fan? Didn't I hear in the background you talk about the LA Lakers?
Well, I'm not a Laker fan per se. I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan, my friend. But but I do think that they go in there the favourites. They were the team before we had the hiatus because of shutting down the competition. They looked as good as anyone. I think anytime you've got Anthony Davis and LeBron James on the same team, that you going to be in contention. So, Coach, when it comes to predictions in the NBA, what's your take? Who do you like the look of?
I'm going with the Clippers, Joey. I said it before. When you have Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Beverly, you're 1, 2, and 3, the best defensive 1, 2, and 3 in the league. And I think that's going to help them get to the next level.
Well, I think that, again, the West Coast is looking really, really strong. Toronto Raptors, we don't talk about them enough. And, in fact, I want you to have a look at this, Coach. Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol has just been taking this COVID moment and, you know, he was a heavy sort of guy.
Yep.
Well, have a look at this picture of Marc Gasol. He has been on some sort of diet, and whether or not there he is there.
Wow.
Have a look.
Wow.
Look at how much weight he has lost. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. But certainly the Toronto Raptors, when you think of the East, they're defending champions and what he's done to himself, my goodness, that is a lot of weight that the big fella's lost. But
absolutely,
when it comes to making a prediction, I'm on the Lakers, and it seems like I've got a bit of support for the Lakers too. And another guy that knows a lot about winning championships is Draymond Green, and he doesn't hold back in his opinions. And this is what he had to say about who he thinks is going to be the team to beat.
Going into the season and all season long, the Clippers were the favorite. Just when you look at their team, they have everything that you need to win a championship. However, I think, going into this bubble, the Lakers got to be the favorite because, they got LeBron and that he can kind of adjust to anything. And I think he's probably the most disciplined player we've ever seen in the NBA. And that's going to matter going into this bubble. And so I think, having LeBron on your team going into this bubble gives you a slight advantage.
It certainly does. There's the great Draymond Green. And thanks to the good folk at Get Up there, what a program that is on ESPN. That was Draymond Green spending some time on that and sharing his thoughts. And I guess that's going to be the view of many, because not only the fact of LeBron James, but also because when you look at where the season and how it was unfolding before they stopped playing, the Lakers were, and the combination with LeBron James and Anthony Davis is going to be tough.
But he spoke about LeBron being disciplined. Kawhi Leonard is disciplined, just as disciplined as LeBron. So, again, both of those teams are very talented. I just think it comes down to whoever's fit, whoever's been keeping themselves in shape, and whoever wants it the most. And I'm going with the Clippers.
Because the other thing, and I don't know if you've been watching the basketball tournament on ESPN. You've been watching?
I've watched a little bit of that. Yes, I have.
Well, one thing they have done, I think, is when you think of a game with no fans, the banners, the way in which they've dropped the banners down, the way in which they've covered the court, I've been super impressed with that. And so it's going to be a whole different look, and the atmosphere is going to be different. And what about these players, Coach? Because we know that there's a lot of ego involved.
Yep.
Do you think that not having fans, or what team and players do you think are going to be most affected by not having the roar and the emotion of having fans in the venue?
These guys don't care, man. It's all about the money. They're in it for the money.
Yeah.
And look, I would be too.
Yeah.
So, I did watch a game the other day, and Robinson from the Melbourne
John
team,
Robinson, yeah.
And
that's in the basketball tournament.
Yes, he's playing with the
Machado.
Machado.
Yeah.
Those two guys had 24 and 26 points respectively.
Yes.
They're tearing that league apart right now.
Yes.
So it was a great tournament to watch.
Yep.
Like you said, there's no fans in the stands, but they're playing for the money, Drew. They are playing.
Well, it is, and how that translates to, like you say, the mega stars, and how serious that they take. I think once they pull on their boots and they're out in the court, you kind of forget what it's like to have fans, and you're just so competitive that I think it'll become a great spectacle. And in many sense, you could say, well, talk about putting an asterisk next to this season, that it could actually be greater credibility because of these circumstances and how difficult it was. It actually might stand for more than a regular season. I'm not so sure. Now, Coach, before we move on from the NBA, just get your thought on the NBA's decision to allow players not to have their name on the back of the jersey,
right,
but also to include statements, motivational statements about some of the social injustices that are going on, the Black Lives Matter movement. They're allowing players to put statements on their jersey.
Yep.
What's your take?
I think that's a great idea. I think the relationship that Adam Silver has with his players, something you mentioned earlier, is fantastic. And these guys have come to him and said, look, Adam, we want to keep this movement going. How can you help? Perhaps they sat down, had a meeting about it, and said, look, you put this on the back of your jersey, Black Lives Matter or I Can't Breathe, just to keep this movement going, the awareness, so people understand that we're in it to help the situation around the world.
Yeah, and they've limited the number of statements they can use. So they have to try to put some classification around it. You can't just have anything on the back of your jersey. Power to the people, say her name, see us, hear us, respect us, love us, all those types of things. And I'm with you. I think it is a great initiative. The only concern that I have, and maybe this is a glass half empty type situation, is that I actually think that a lot of fans will see that, and unfortunately a lot of people just don't get it. They don't understand it. And there'll be fans that they'll be resentful for the fact of these guys using their platform to make these types of statements. And unfortunately, I think that there'll be some fans out there that don't warm to that. I personally do. I love it.
Well, do you think overall that would hurt the fans, or do you think it would hurt the game? I mean,
it doesn't hurt the game.
Will fans drop off the NBA?
Well, that's it. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I'm wrong. But one thing we've learned over the last couple of months is that there are some people here that have some different ideas, and we've got to respect everyone's opinion. But some of them, gee whiz, that they really are insulted by by athletes in particular having a voice, and that's terrible in my judgment. But they're entitled to their view, and some of them may go to the length to say, well, this has turned me off the game.
Well, let me tell you something, Julie. This is how I feel. The game is that strong right now.
Yeah.
If the people don't understand the movement right now, then we probably don't want those fans anyway. We got enough fans floating around the world that'll keep this game going, believe me.
Well, I hope you're right. And I tell you what, one of the things that this has shown through all this, the COVID-19, the Black Lives Matter, the conversations that people are having, and when you talk about using your platform to do good, there have been some unbelievable contributions by athletes in the NBA in the way in which that they say, I want to help. And it's not just help out there in spirit and saying the right thing and putting a name on the back of the jersey or a statement on the back of the jersey. For some, it's going that extra distance. And I don't think anyone has gone as far, when you talk of Australian athletes, in regards to Patty Mills. Patty Mills is going to be playing the remainder of this NBA season in the bubble for the San Antonio Spurs, and he has decided to donate his remaining salary that he has on the table for this season, which equates to about $1.5 million. He's decided to donate it to the cause. Here is what Patty Mills had to say.
I've made the decision to go to Orlando, and I'm proud to say that I'm taking every cent earned from these 8 games that we're playing, which for me will turn out to be $1,017,818.54, and donating that directly back to the Black Lives Matter Australia, Black Deaths in Custody, and to a recent campaign that's called the We Got You campaign, dedicating to ending racism in sport in Australia. So I'm playing in Orlando because I don't want to leave any money on the table that could be going directly to Black communities.
Now that, to me, is putting your money where your mouth is and going the extra yard. And I tell you what, when you see individuals like Patty Mills, just makes you proud to be part of the basketball community. It makes you proud of what he is as an Australian. And it almost brought me a tear to my eye when I heard that what he was doing and the commitment that he was making.
He's always been that kind of a guy, though. Patty Mills has always been one of those guys that did the right thing. If it's on the floor or off the floor, you've never had a problem with him. And I think, again, he's putting his money where his mouth is. And you know, like you said, you only feel, I felt goosebumps myself.
Yeah.
You only feel goosebumps when you know a guy is dedicating his salary to help the cause of his fellow man.
Well, Coach, the other thing before we move on from our little NBA chat is it's come to an end for Vince Carter. He is one of the iconic figures that has been around for many, many years, played with 8 different NBA teams. A human highlight reel.
No, the real human highlight reel. Trust me.
And it's just an extraordinary thing. And have a look at this dunk here. Of all the dunks that he has done in his
You
career.
got to show it to me. I know which one you're talking
Dunk
about.
jumping, and we can see it on the vision right now, coming in and jumping. That man he jumped over, Coach.
What's his name?
7'1" is the Frenchman there, and just rising above in the red, white, and blue for the United States, and just one of the all-time great dunks in I think in any league. For him to do that, just extraordinary. But he has been an incredible figure for the in the NBA for a long, long period of time.
Was that dunk in Sydney?
43 years of age.
Was that dunk in Sydney? That was in Sydney.
Yes, that was in the 2000 Olympics. And as I said, he's played for 8 different teams, and he's 25,728 points, his 19th most of all time. He's also collected 6,606 rebounds, 4,714 assists, and just been an incredible figure when it comes to his contribution to the NBA. And, Coach, you remember before he did that spectacular dunk, the Australian team got to play against the USA team.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that. Is that the time you ran and hid behind Mark Brecky? You tried to bump up at Vince Carter and he came back at you? Was that the same time?
Yes, and you see some of the vision, some of the photos. But we got into a little argy-bargy. As you know, when you're not athletic and you're trying to shoot a 3, at the top of the key, shooting a 3 ball, and he comes running by, and you stick your leg out as you do, just trying to collect the foul.
Yep.
He didn't take too kindly to that, and went back, argy-bargy. I was rolling on the floor, rolling around. He had his hand on my neck, and boy, was I in this submission position.
Were you shaking? Yes, you were. I do remember that.
I was a little nervous, but in the true Australian way, Mark Brecky, Shane Hill was in there. He loved those situations. He's one of my good friends. He came in there to fly the flag for me. But great times, and I still remember after that the crowd being Australian, obviously the fans, 15,000 people cheering for Australia. But every time that Vince Carter got near the ball,
they booed him.
They booed him, and the Carter is a wanker chant went out. And in all honesty, I felt bad. I felt bad that here as a superstar of our game, a guy that I had great respect for, was being treated like this. But and in the press conference afterwards, one of the American journals, hey, Andrew Gates, the fans, Carter's a wanker. What is all that about? What does that mean? And so I had to. Now, I wasn't sure if he didn't understand what the term.
So what did you tell him? What did you say to him?
I just said that perhaps that they weren't. I tried to be as diplomatic as I could, as you'd imagine. I just said that it wasn't an endearing thing they were talking about him, or I'm sorry it led to that, but these things happen, and they ended up winning. I think they beat us by about 30. So it was.
I think it was 37. In fact, exactly 36 somewhere in there. Yeah, it was close.
Yeah, it was a comfortable win.
Oh, of course.
But
did he shake your hand after the game though?
He did, and they all did. But we were all staying at the Crown Casino, and they didn't let it slide. They were giving us the stink eye. When we were walking around the hotel, it was like they were very dismissive of us and who we were and what we were trying to do. But you know, hey, Coach, let's turn our attention to the Australian basketball scene.
Yep.
And we're going to, as we said, we're going to talk to Jeff Van Groningen. Before we do that, just wanted to touch base with the Opals. Sure. The Opals, and I know we're focusing on Black Lives Matter, and we're not going to do this week in, week out, but they've been had some perhaps I wouldn't say disagreement, but they were putting some pressure on Basketball Australia about being a whole lot more vocal in their support of the Black Lives Matter. Liz Cambridge, in particular, was
General Hay
was tweeting, and I say good on them.
Yep,
good on them. And I don't think Basketball Australia were intentionally, not overtly, going out there to say that, hey, we respect what was going on. It's just that they didn't put in place anything formal. They weren't making any public statements about it for
That's
a
right.
time.
They didn't speak on it.
And it got to the point where the Opals said, well, you know what, if we don't hear some noise out of Basketball Australia, we're not even going to show up to camp. They were threatening not going to camp and those types of things. So good on the Opals and the way in which they've been championing a very, very good cause. Now, Coach, let's turn our attention to the NBL. We're hopeful that it's going to be starting. In fact, it's been scheduled to start in early December, and still a lot of uncertainty because of what we've experienced with COVID-19. But it's going to have a big impact, and we want to get Jeff. We're going to pull up Jeff Van Groningen in a little bit to talk about some of the rule changes. But it's going to be a big challenge for these teams to be able to firstly put their teams together, and certainly those that are able to get their imports here, that's going to be a huge challenge.
It's going to be a massive challenge for you. I honestly think you're going to have a problem if this COVID thing keeps going and you can't get fans in the stands. How does the NBL move? They don't have TV money. The money comes in from those fans.
Yeah.
So what happens if the COVID's still hanging around? You tell me.
No, well, clearly, I think it'd be very difficult, and I think that the league has been very open, and Larry's been has conceded that until such a time. And Larry Kesselman, we're referring to, the owner of the competition, but until such a time as the situation throughout the country allows fans back in venues, then you wouldn't be able to have a league. And I think we've seen some really solid strides forwards in a lot of the states. We've seen what they're doing with the AFL, with smaller attendances coming back in. I think in Adelaide, you're allowed to have 10,000 people to a game. Clearly, in an indoor environment, it's a little bit different. But hopefully, by December, we're over it all. And if you're a Victorian, that might seem highly optimistic, given that the state, the vast majority of the state is still in lockdown. But hopefully by then, we're able to play. But let's for a minute just assume that we are allowed to play. We've seen some of the teams in the off season. Anyone stick out in regards to the rumours, because the official free agency period is not in place? But who sticks out as being one of the big movers in the off season for you?
Well, I've been looking at the Sydney Kings. I mean, because we were there, if you don't have an Andrew Bogut and you don't sort of have a Kevin Lish. First of all, you're going to lose the experience of those two guys. Now, they're not outscoring 1 million points, but the experience those guys have off the court, on the court, helps the Kings. Now, again, you spoke about imports coming in. Yeah. You don't know who's going to come back. I mean, it's hard to put your finger on what's happening. Yeah. Well, I think the good news for the Sydney Kings is Xavier Cooks has re-signed, which is a fantastic signing for them, because he would have had offers to go and play in Europe, I'm sure. DJ Vasiljevic. Now, most of the basketball community wouldn't be aware of DJ Vasiljevic, but he's been playing at the University of Miami in the ACC. He spent 4 seasons there. They didn't have a great year last season, but he still was averaging 14, 15 points a game. He's a nugget little point guard that can shoot it from anywhere and has incredible confidence. So he's going to help fill that void with Kevin Lish not being there. Now, there's very few players you can get that is going to do what Kevin Lish does on the defensive end, but he's certainly going to be a handful on the offensive end. And the other one that I'm hearing they're signing is Angus Glover, the kid from the Illawarra Hawks. Yep. And he's one that's had horrific knee problems. I think 3 knee reconstructions, but unbelievable athlete. And last season, in a diabolical season for the Illawarra Hawks, that I thought was one kid you looked at and said, you know what, this guy's got some tremendous upside. A great athlete, so he'll help their cause. So they have been pretty proactive in the off-season trying to find the replacements. But I think the team that sticks out for me the most, and this sounds ridiculous, Coach,
But you're talking about a team that I don't think has a single player signed just yet. But they have signed the guru, the legend, the superstar, Brian Goorjian as their head coach. And we know intimately how tough it is to play against Brian Goorjian teams. He has been or taken teams to the playoffs 19 consecutive seasons.
I got a question for you now. Brian Goorjian, we love him. He's a great coach. He knows what he's doing. But how many years has it been since Brian Goorjian has been in this league? First of all. Second question, we know the style of basketball Brian Goorjian likes to play, which is the defensive style. The game has changed a little bit now. Is Brian going to be the same Brian? Is he going to? And then you got to go out and pick 8 or 9 new players. Are we saying Brian's going to make the playoffs again, Drew? I'm asking you that question.
Well, I'm not going to doubt the man because his record speaks for himself. And it's not like he's gone away from basketball altogether. Right. He's been coaching in China. And you're right, it's been a long, long time and the league has changed significantly since he was there the last time. But he is internationally renowned. He did an outstanding job he went to 3 or 4 different teams in China, had great success with each and every one of them. And I don't think there's any reason that you should doubt Brian Goorjian. Now, of course, if he doesn't have the talent, I don't care who it is.
That's right.
You could put Phil Jackson into a team here in Australia, but if they do not have the talent, they're not going to be able to get it done. So that is going to be a big question mark about that. But I think it's great for the competition. It's great for the Illawarra and that area.
They changed that name as well.
That's
not Illawarra anymore.
I'm calling it Illawarra because they've dropped the Illawarra name and they're just known as the Hawks right now, which I don't know. There might be other plans in place for that, but they're still going to be based out of Illawarra. So hopefully that doesn't alienate too many of their fans. But with him at the helm, he is going to bring talent to them because they want to play for Brian Goorjian and learn from the master.
Well, let's just be fair. Let's just be honest and fair. Brian Goorjian is known for going out and getting the best talent.
Yes. The
best talent costs a lot of money.
Yes.
Can Illawarra afford Brian Goorjian and the best talent? That's my question.
Well, that's their new ownership group that they've got in place, which includes Brian Colangelo, who has got vast NBA experience. And he's would understand that if you're going to make a success of it, you're going to have to spend some money, and he'll get enough out of his Australian talent. And like with most teams or a lot of the teams, I think the 2 imports that they get, and if they are high quality and he surrounds them with enough Australian talent, they are certainly going to be knocking on the door. So, Copes, I think this is a good time to now call in one of our good friends and a man that knows everything about the NBL. Every nook and cranny, every player, every rule that's in place is Jeff Van Groningen. He's the general manager of the Adelaide 36ers, and he's going to be able to keep us up to date and informed about how this new season is going to look. Jeff, welcome to the program. So, Jeff, thanks for joining us. It's been a tumultuous time in the NBL, and, of course, with you now at the helm of the Adelaide 36ers coming from the Sydney Kings. How have you found this off-season? Because it's something like we've never experienced before.
It's been unprecedented. I've found the off-season to be probably just like the general populace has found living life. Crazy, unusual, couldn't see it coming, and you adapt as best you can. And I think that applies to life, that applies to the NBL off-season.
And Jeff, you've gone out and got a new coach. It's going to be virtually a kind of whole new look for the 36ers. With the coach, that makes such a big difference to the look of the club anyway. But Connor Henry, he's new to the Adelaide 36ers, but he's not new to Australian basketball, having spent time with the Perth Wildcats and the Sydney Kings. Just talk us through how that decision came about.
Well, you've known me a long time, Andrew, and I guess I'm a bit of a patterned guy when it comes to going with people that you established a relationship with over a long period of time. And I think that makes me feel best about what you're entrusting someone with. And when it comes to Connor Henry, I do go back quite a ways with Connor. And primarily around that great event that I would normally be at right now, which is the NBA Summer League. I'm suffering withdrawals because right now, as we speak, we would normally be sitting in the stands, all of us, and enjoying that. But normally speaking, and on an annual basis, I've made that pilgrimage to the Las Vegas Summer League, NBA Summer League, for, believe it or not, since 2004. And just to age me a little more than that, the LA Summer Pro League before that. And Connor Henry's been a fixture at that event for many, many years. And I've always caught up with him and picked his brain about, hey, you're a knowledgeable guy. Can you tell us, you know our league, you've coached out here, you've been a scout in the NBA. What players might work in our league? And you just establish a relationship. And Connor and I established that relationship quite some time ago. And then, as you also know, hopefully about me, Drewy, is that I am interested in the person. And Connor's been a tremendously gregarious, polite person when I've taken groups over, industry groups, people I've known, even my own family, and always given us time. And so you establish a personal relationship as well. So all those things contributed. And then the final aspect was what you started this segment with, which is the COVID-19 period of time is an unusual period of time, to say the least. That could be the understatement of the century. So when you're facing this period of time, I think you look for particular attributes in a person. And we had some incredible candidates for the coaching position. We were blown away, but we were humbled. But some of them hadn't had the experience that Connor Henry's had around either our league or other leagues, or in his case, all of the above. And so we felt like such is the time, such is the appointment you sometimes need to make. So we believe that Connor Henry was a good appointment for this particular challenging period of time. Very steady. It's been around. Nothing's going to fluster him too much. I think that came into it as well.
Good. Jeff, I want to ask you a quick question about your roster. I mean, I know you, as a general manager, play a key role in choosing a lot of the players. Now, you've lost Drimmick. You've lost Falling. How do you replace those guys, and who do you replace them with?
Well, obviously, we have some pending announcements for just a few days from now, Copes, on the 15th of July when free agency period comes. But, of course, it's been widely speculated that we had a really good look at Isaac Humphries, and we obviously want to make a positive announcement about that at the right time. As I said the other day, Drewy, if we were looking for a 7-footer who had some college experience at Kentucky University, who had won a Rookie of the Year award in the NBL, we would probably look at Isaac Humphries.
Signed. And Josh Giddey, he's a big signing for you guys too. Are you allowed to talk about him or not, Jeff?
We are, because that was not a free agency situation. As you know, we signed him well before before anybody else, really. And look, we were really humbled. We know you and Copes know Josh very, very well through the family connections, and he's been working out with you, of course, Drewy, and been working out, keeping himself in shape with yourself and Gorgon and others in the off season until Gorge went to an opposition club. I don't really want him there now, working him out. But no, look, he was a massive one, and I'm incredibly high on what he can do. And I know I'm not alone in that respect, but we think that he's a transcendent talent at the age of 17, 18 when the season starts.
Now, Jeff, by the sound of it, I'm doing the numbers, and this is where I want you to give us an overview of the rules. Last year, you could have 3 imports, or last season, I should say, you could have 3 imports, and you could have a next stars player. There's marquee players. There's a whole bunch of things that have been on and part of the league the last few years. But this, because of the COVID-19 situation, I believe there's been some changes. Teams are only allowed to have 2 imports, but I suspect, or it's been rumoured, that you guys now, with signing those, attempting or proposing or whatever language, pending signing, are only going to have 1 import. Is that correct?
We're looking at a situation where we could look at a 1 import model. But I think the big thing with this, Drewy and Copes, is that we can look at all we want to do, as the other 8 teams in the league are looking at the moment. And there's a lot of unknowns about 1 import or two imports and when they would even be available. I think it's a little presumptuous to talk about whether we'd have 1 import or 2 imports until we have the discussion about how are imports going to look in this league
Yeah.
right now. Just in the last couple of days, of course, our coach, Connor Henry, has arrived in the country. It took us 3 months to get that travel exemption.
Wow.
Okay, now that was a big process. So if imports were also, if everything stayed the same now between now and December 3rd when the season is going to tip off, if it's the same for everybody, it may take teams quite a bit of time to get imports into the country. So what I've pivoted us to, Andrew, is to say we might want to just concentrate on an import to start. Let's just concentrate on the best available talent we can get, and let's hold the other import up our sleeve. Now, I've been around a little while, and
you're good for that. You're known for holding things up your sleeve, Jeff. You're known for that. Yes.
Sometimes the competitive nature, Copes, might get to you, and you might say, "Well, do we need to have a look at what else we can do import-wise?" Right. But I just think right now it's probably smart for us in our particular case to identify an import to start with. But let's see what happens after that.
Jeff, I got a question for you now. Adelaide are known for their crowd, their rowdy crowd. They love their basketball down in South Australia. What happens in December if you're only allowed half that crowd, or you're worried about spacing or whatever? Is that going to hurt your team, or how do you deal with that as general manager?
Well, I certainly think that teams that have a strong home court advantage, which is what you're referring to, would much prefer to have it packed to the rafters than some sort of social distancing. We don't want social distancing in Adelaide.
Right.
We want social crowding, and we want, within the health environment that we're in, and hopefully by then, please praying that it's all passed. But no, it's a really good question. We don't know what the rollout of the crowds in December is going to look like. But what we do know is that with thanks to Larry Kesselman, Jeremy Lowleager, Andy Crook, and that team at the NBL head office, they've tried to do what's right by the league owners and the league management across all teams to attempt to get us to the point where we will have crowds. And look, they're in the hands of the government like the rest of us. But there's some smart people there, and they believe that by December, that there's a better chance that we'll have full crowds than obviously if we had started at our normal time in October. But your point is right. We want full crowds. We want to have full houses, and we believe a competitive advantage of a home court like Adelaide, the Adelaide Entertainment Centre, will be really, really strong for us if we can have full crowds. But I guess you could say that half the crowd in Adelaide would also be maybe ahead of half the crowd in some other venues too, in terms of the noise they can make. So maybe that's something.
Well, those pending players combined with Daniel Johnson and a quality import, and gee whiz, I think you'll have a very, very competitive team. But Jeff, just for our listeners, because talking to you in this off season, I'm not across the minutiae of all the rules that are going on out there, but just when it comes to marquee players, it's a term that we hear a lot by commentators. Oh, well, he's a marquee player. In terms of marquee players and also the sacrifices that the players have made to their salary cap, just can you give us a quick snapshot of some of the issues that you and the players and the league have had to deal with?
Well, first of all, on the marquee player, you're right. I think it's a too well-hidden secret what a marquee player is. Because I think it's great credit to the NBL head office that they have this rule. If it wasn't for the marquee player rule, the recruitment of a guy like Andrew Bogut at the time that we were at Sydney, for example, in my opinion, wouldn't have been possible. Because what the marquee player rule allows you to do is recruit a player, and yes, you pay him what he needs to be paid. So in the case of Andrew Bogut, and rightly so, he was paid really good money. Yeah. But in terms of on the salary cap, and our salary cap's not high in the NBL by world standards, it means that his entire salary didn't count on the salary cap. So by nominating him as a marquee player, in his case, marquee player number 1, and we also had Kevin Lish and Brad Newley as marquee players number 2 and 3, by the way, you get a discount on that player in terms of what his cap number is. So you're still paying him what you're paying him, but your cap number is lower. And that means that guys like Bogues become an actual possibility of some sort, where otherwise if you had to wear their whole cap number, it would be really difficult. And that's great for future days, because who knows whether a Matthew Dellavedova could come home or a Joe Ingles might come home one day. It's up to them. But So that's how a marquee player rule works.
There's three. There's three.
You can nominate up to three. You can nominate up to three. But this is where it gets a little bit complicated. If you nominated all three, you could only have one import because you can only have a total of 4 positions between the marquee players and the imports. So if you have 2 imports, you can only have 2 marquee players.
Gotcha.
But if you had 3 marquee players, you could have 1 import and so forth.
Right.
So it's a bit of a management thing, but I think it's a brilliant rule because it encourages bringing really strong Australians home. And over this off-season, for example, I've inquired about. Now, sometimes the inquiries didn't go my way, but I've inquired about guys like Brock Modem and Ryan Brokoff and these guys, because you ask the question and you say, look, we're probably only a couple million short, but we could bring you in as a marquee player and at least not wear whatever we do have to pay you. Now, that's how the marquee player rule works, and that's the marquee player rule whether it's COVID-19 season or not. What's changed this season is that we've also had this agreement between the NBL and its owners and the NBL Players Association led by Jacob Holmes, which was about actually bringing down, just for one season, the amount of money that players are actually paid. Right. And in a nutshell, existing contracts were brought down by as much as 50%, but not 50% for those lower paid players. And in fact, for minimum salary players, it was not discounted at all. But everywhere between minimum and a couple $100,000, there was a sliding scale that basically, if you were on a contract, the agreement was your contract just shrunk compulsorily. But it also was fair because you could opt out of that contract. And that's what we saw several people do, including Nick Kay, who still, as we speak, has opted out of his Perth Wildcats contract. So it was to try to make it a more sustainable scenario for all parties concerned. We're grateful to the Players Association and Jacob for working with the league on that. We're grateful for Jeremy and the Boffins at the NBL that have to balance all this stuff out on a regular basis. And they did it really, really well. And they brought a system in. No system's perfect. No system's permanent. This was never suggested, I don't think, to be something that we're going to live with, from now until the end of time. But I think the owners rightly said, and the players, to their credit, said, yep, this is a different situation. We need to do something right now.
All good stuff, Jeff. We're all the wiser for having you on our program, and hopefully this you'll come in on a regular basis and just say g'day to us and just fill us in with all the goings on behind the scenes, because you know what's going on.
Well, at this particular time, all I have is time, so I'm happy to be here.
At least you're in Adelaide and you're not in Melbourne and you're not.
No, I'm in Brisbane. I'm actually in Brisbane. I can't get to Adelaide just yet. So right. I'm planning on going down to get Connor Henry out of his 14-day isolation when it finishes in Sydney, and we'll then fly into Adelaide on the 24th. We're going to join our owner Grant Kelly, and we're going to have a press conference to welcome Connor Henry to town, and then hopefully it's going to start to feel like the band's getting together at Adelaide. But that's the plans, and things can change between now and then, but let's just hope and pray they don't.
Well, good luck, Jeff. Good luck,
Jeff.
Pal.
Good luck, pal.
Thanks, guys.
And thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Well, there's Jeff Van Groningen, and he knows a lot about the NBL, and we hope to have him on, Coach, on a weekly basis, or certainly as regularly as we can, because there's a lot of stuff there that I wasn't even aware of in regards to the upcoming rules and the way in which the salary cap works. It's great to get that knowledge, and I'm sure the fans appreciate it.
He's been around a long time. Jeff knows this game inside and out.
Well, he has been around a long time, Coach, but so have you, my friend. And we thought in this podcast we'd like to go back and reflect back on those great days of the 90s and when you were running around and with the whole sport was a buzz, and the little segment we call Magic Moments. And that's one of those pivotal moments in the NBL history, or it could be Australian history. It could be with the national teams, a whole bunch of things that we want to focus on just to reflect. And perhaps some of the young folk that's watching us may not be aware of some of the greatness that took place back in the day. And I want to go back to 1993. It was the year the Melbourne Tigers picked up Mark Bradkey. Everyone assumed that, well, just give the Tigers the trophy. Copeland, Gaze, Simmons, Sibley, and Bradkey, fair starting lineup. They should be able to get it done. But, Copes, despite all that talent, it was tough going.
It was a stinker, Joey. Started off a stinker. What were we, 3-9 or something like that?
Well, we were 3-9 in the other year. We won it in 1997. But that year we were 2-5, and we got to a point where we started to made some inroads. Good things started to happen. And we got to the tail end of the season, going into the last quarter of the season, and we got to 10-8. And we took on and we're taking on the Southeast Melbourne Magic. And
a number one rivalry, yeah.
And 15,000 people in the stands. This, for the young folk out there, was an era where we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have social media. We didn't have all that other stuff, but we had 15,000 people at the stadium. And Coach, just explain to us and let the listeners know what it was like, the rivalry between the Tigers and the Magic.
Troy, I still get goosebumps when we talk about playing against the Magic. Those teams, Brian Gorge's team, were out for the Tigers. They hated the Tigers. We hated them.
Yes.
The problem was we shared the same venue.
Yes.
So we'd come in for a game to practice, and they'd be leaving, or they'd come in, we'd be leaving. We just hated their guts, and they hated our guts. But it made for good basketball. And the fans...
Yeah.
The fans hated the fans. So it was the best basketball that I've ever played in my life.
Some of the greatest games in the history of the NBL were between the Melbourne Tigers and the Southeast Melbourne Magic. And 10-8, trying to get ahead, we were just hanging on to a playoff position, and we were taking on the Magic. And this was such an important game for us. The Magic were the defending champions. We trailed it by as many as 17. And then with just under a minute to go, we trailed it by 7 with under a minute to go.
Yep.
And then with 24 seconds left remaining, the game was getting on the line, and then the great Lanard Copeland started to step up. And with 5 points down, let's take a look at this little piece of action of the great man.
Rose misses the second. So 5 points of difference. We've got to get that early shot so they get another attempt. Copeland misses. Bolden fighting for the ball. Sibley back to Gaze. Gaze, Copeland for 3. Bingo! Down it goes.
So there we had it, and we're in a situation now. We're only 2 down. We've come from 17 down, 7 down with a minute to go. You saw the clock and time there, and the great Lanard Copeland. I did whatever I could to try and get that shot off, but I couldn't get it off. They double-teamed me. Made a beautiful pass.
You wanted to shoot it, though. You definitely wanted to.
You took the first flying
player. When you're down by that many points, you just want to get that shot up as fast as you can.
Well, you did and missed. And fortunately, we got the rebound. They kicked it out. They double-teamed closeout, kicked it to you. You hit the 2. So now we're 2 points down. And in one of the greatest moments in NBL history, I'm just going to let the vision do the speaking in the Magic moments.
The ones he's got to take here right now. He can really put the game beyond the Tigers if he can make them. Misses the first, and the Tigers have got the rebound. Copeland. Will they go for 3? Copeland! He makes the shot! Unbelievable! Rose from halfway! The Tigers have won the game! Oh, this is one of the great comebacks!
Drew, you know what?
It just... We had to foul. So on the inbounds pass, we didn't see it pass. You didn't see it on the vision there. We fouled, put Tony Ronaldson to the line. He was 6 of 6 in the game before that shot. That was back in the day where it was 1-on-1.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they were 2 down. He misses it. Gaze gets the rebound. Gaze with the assist. And Coach with the hero 3-pointer.
Now, let me ask you a question, Drew. I've never asked you this. Were you expecting for me to take a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer there?
I absolutely knew that you were not taking a 2-pointer.
You better believe it, son. I'm not looking for a tie. Yes. I'm trying to win the game. And Rob Rose gave me a lane to drive, and I said, "No, Rob, I'm going to put this through my legs, and I'm going to let it fly." And luckily enough, it went down. Another one thing I remember the most about after that shot went in was me being. I've never been as tired as I in my life because I had the whole team grabbing my head and holding on to me. I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe, but it was well worth it. It was well worth it.
Well, that's you can actually watch the entire game. It's on YouTube. If you go to the Melbourne Tigers YouTube channel, you can see that entire game. And if you want to fast forward it to the end to see the great man knock down another 3-ball, it's well worth it. It's one of the great games. Hopefully, we didn't really do it justice there because we tried to just show the absolute finish of it. But it was a spectacular game. Another come from behind victory by the mighty Melbourne Tigers. And how ironic that we're calling it magic moments, because it was a magic moment and it was against the Magic.
Absolutely.
But there it is. They were great days, great times. 15,000 people in the tennis centre, and he's hoping that one day, when you think of Melbourne United and what Phoenix are doing, he's hoping that we get back to that venue. I know the Melbourne Arena and the smaller venues in that precinct are fantastic, but there's nothing like the atmosphere.
Nothing like playing in front of 15,000 screaming fans in Melbourne, and half of the fans are with you, half the team fans are with the other people.
So another thing that I wanted to touch on before we said sayonara is that, have you seen the Kanye West? He's got a new shoe. He's running out for presidency, apparently. He's going to be trying to be the next Donald Trump.
Come on, Joey.
But he's also seen put together. He's got a very, very successful range of footwear and clothing, and he's got the whole box and dice. But he's starting to move into Andrew Gay's territory, because now he's coming out with a shoe.
Foam runners. It's called the foam
Yeezy foam runner. Now, I don't know. He's probably more of a fashion type situation. But as you know, I think it's remarkably coincidental that he's bringing out this new shoe. Have a look at I'm no shoe guru, Copes. That doesn't even look like a shoe.
Joey,
just a foam with holes in it.
Listen, you're wrong. You are a shoe guru. Aren't you bringing out your own shoe?
I am a shoe guru when it comes to performance shoes, as you know, because the throughout from 2004 to 2009, the Gay shoe. Have a look at that. There, we got some vision of the Gay shoe. That was one of the models.
Nice looking shoe.
Well, Copes, I've got some good news.
Yep.
I've got some terrific news, because December this year, once again, the Gay's Footwear is going to be gracing the discount department stores in Australia. $34.95 for adults, around about $29.95 for kids. And I tried to get you to be an endorsed athlete back in 2005. You got a look of it. Now, I will say that the product's improved significantly since then. But
let's hope so.
No, come on. It's some quality product we put together back then, wasn't it?
Sure. Yeah, well, let me tell you something.
Yes.
That shoe, the look of it, fantastic.
Thank you.
The smell, fantastic. Looked great on my feet.
Yes.
Until I walked outside and stepped on a stone, and I could feel every stone in the street. Let me tell you something. The box had more support back there than the shoe, Jordan. Now, let's hope you put a little bit more support in the shoe, and I think it'll do well. I think it'll do well.
Now, that's not true. I know you're just doing that to get a laugh. But no, high quality shoes at a very, very affordable price. That's the
it looks good too. You got to remember, it does look good.
It does look good. Me and Yeezy, me and Kanye are putting together a brand. He might sell a few more than I will, but nevertheless, quality product that's coming to a discount department store.
For the rest of your life, don't ever compare yourself to Kanye West. You don't want to, brother.
I certainly don't want to compare him when it comes to some of his attitudes towards society.
Yep.
But the man seems to have a feel for the fashion type situation. So
good luck to him.
He's been doing some very good things. Hey, Copes, that's all we've got time for this week. It's been a cracking show. We've waffled on a little bit more than what we normally do, but it's been a lot of fun. You've been fantastic talking hoops with you. I could do it for days. We will do it again next week and hopefully the week after until they get sick of us. But it's been a lot of fun. Enjoyed your time, and looking forward to catching up with you for another chat next week.
Thank you, Joey, for having me on the Alley Hoop Show. I'm excited. I'll see you again next week.
We will catch everyone next week. Thanks to Jeff Van Groningen for jumping on the line for us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. And catch us on all the socials, YouTube, Twitter, Spotify.
Yep.
You can hear us and watch us all over the place. We look forward to having your company next week on The Alley Hoop Show.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.